Welcome to Lely Centre Mitchelstown's virtual open day. We're here just outside Newmarket on Brian O'Riordan's farm. Today we're going to be taking you through Brian's system, how he runs it on a day-to-day basis while balancing a full-time job and family life.
Hi, my name is Brian O'Riordan. Welcome to my farm here in Newmarket, County Cork. I'm farming here on a grazing block of around 23 hectares. I'm milking 60 cows.
Brian, what made you convert from conventional milking to an automatic milking system?
I set this place up as a dairy farm in 2012. We have a dairy farm. We had a dairy farm 8 miles away from here in Kishkame, and we just run this farm as a calf to beef operation essentially. And we weren't making a whole pile of money out of beef, so I went down the conventional route with a milking parlour. I moved to Lely, working full time with Lely in 2015. And when I started with Lely, actually, I thought that robots were for more indoor herds, high yielding systems, etc. But I suppose my travels with Lely up and down Ireland, I got to see a lot of farms that were starting off at that time grazing with robots and doing a very good job. So I was so impressed by that, and I was supposed working long hours trying to balance a milking parlour and a full-time job isn't easy. So I suppose with that there was TAMS grants in 2016, so I applied for a TAMS grant and I decided to convert the farm at that stage to automatic milking. So I started up then in May 2017 and began the process of.
And how did you find the startup? Did it go well? Did the cows transition easily?
Yeah, I suppose it's about it's like ripping a band-aid off, and I suppose frankly, even though I work for Lely, you're still thinking in the back of your head like, well, it's other people's cows, it's going okay, but will it work for my cows, and that's always in the back of your head. But I mean, I started on a Tuesday, milked the cows. I remember the final milking on Monday evening with the cows as normal in the parlour, and then it's just switch them over to the robot like that. And the startup is, people think a lot about it, but it's not hard work. You're busy, but it's not necessarily hard work. First day is a long day. So the first day we started around 6 a.m. and I mean, there was somebody with the robot 24/7. I got good support from the centre. I also, I planned for this, so I had somebody to come in and do a night shift for me, because it's important you get your sleep in and stuff like that you can think clearly and make decisions. The cows honestly took to the robot. I started on a Tuesday, and all the cows by Friday, once they came to the robot, they'd walk into the robot of their own volition and get milked. They took to it really, really well. The grazing side of it then, honestly, I would say it took 6 weeks before the cows were moving, as you'd like them. The first year, I suppose, it wasn't 100% perfect, but year 2, year 3, it flowed. Once the cows calved down, they got what they had to do immediately, and they worked their way around the farm.
And training in heifers, do you find it easier? Is it a kind of monkey see, monkey do?
Yeah, basically once you train her into the robot and train her to the grazeway, just to use the selection gate, to walk up to it and wait for it to open, once you train them to do that, maybe you might spend the first week that they're out, they might be stuck in a passageway, they don't know where to go left and right, but you don't even notice you're going down to change a wire or change a fence anyway. So you just hunt up the heifers in front of you. There might be a few of them there. There could be a bunch of them, maybe 4 or 5. You hunt them up in front of you and they get it very, very quickly. Okay, so we're now down in Block B, and I suppose Block B is our main grazing block. It's the largest grazing block on the farm. Cows are down here since they started coming here at 2 a.m. So it's after midday now, and we've about 15-16 cows left here. Some of them have gone through to Block C. There's a gate change at 10:30 and they start going to Block C. I was trying to build covers here, so there was a cover here of maybe about 2,000 kilos, They've done a fairish old job in cleaning it out, and I always kind of over allocate on the first break inside in the field, so like they tend to graze back over it going out, so every paddock I try to get about 3 breaks in it. So here we are in block C. So this block opens at 10:30 in the morning. So block C is 10:30 until 6 p.m. Any cow that comes up and visits the robot or visits the grazeway will be directed down to this paddock in block C.
What infrastructure changes did you have to make on the farm to convert from conventional to automatic?
Running from the shed down there, coming down straight here and going back at a right angle was the main roadway. So I put that in, before I started up with a parlour. I needed anyway to get access to paddocks and stuff like that. Also, I did a second roadway above at the top ditch there. Again, it was just access to paddocks. Again, I probably would have needed it with a parlour anyway, just greater access to paddocks. Especially this farm would be, some dry, some heavy ground, so just give me extra access points. For the C block, I just did a cow path, which is just about 2 meters wide. So, just it runs alongside, so it runs parallel to the main, to the block B main roadway.
And do you have any issues with cows passing each other? Say one cow's going down to block B and one cow's coming?
No noticeable issues like that.
They'll pass each other, no problem?
They'll pass each other, no problem. You might see the odd time, if I'm honest, you see the odd time a dominant cow.
Yeah.
Could be just standing there and holding the thing up. And I remember one time being inside the kitchen, was just actually up there, and I was looking down, there was this cow, and she was blocking up, and there was maybe 7 or 8 cows queuing up behind, and I was giving out about the cow, and my wife says, she says, well, you were away working all last week, you didn't see any of this, so why is it bothering you now? So, and
she's right. So
the cows they're milking away, they're doing their own thing, and I suppose cow behaviour takes care of itself. So all I'm looking at is are my cows yielding what I want them to yield, and are they healthy? And after that, the behaviour it takes care of itself. What I also see is heifers kind of do their own thing. They stay away from the dominant cows. I often see like my heifers will make maybe at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe when the robot might be a little bit quieter, that kind of thing, that they'll just slot in at that time and they get their own rhythm in the system.
Did you develop the infrastructure within the shed?
Yeah, I did.
Conversing?
Yeah, I did. So like it was a beef unit, and then I transferred it over to a dairy unit. I used to actually house my cows for the winter in the farm 8 miles away before I put the cubicles in here, most of the cubicles in here anyway. I converted an old silage pit, an old road roof silage pit, to the robot, fitted the robot into that. And it's just in front of a slat. I suppose, like every other farmer, I probably built my yard in the wrong place. There was 2 round roof sheds when I started here, and I built a yard around them. And in hindsight, I suppose maybe I should have gone further down the farm and greenfield and built down there. But I think I'm not unique in making that slip up. I've got 82 cubicles here at the moment for about 60 cows. So the hope is to go up to about 70 cows, but as I said, an issue there with the last 18 months with TB. Hopefully we're getting to the end of that now, and the hope is to go up to 70 cows and maybe a bit with it. Since I was working with Lely, when I thought up in this shed, I designed it with the discovery in mind. So as you can see here, we've got a 100-foot tank here, and I've got a crossover area on top where it works. And I have a flow channel in the shed to take the slurry. So it parks here up on top of the flow channel, it charges here, and it runs on, it charges 60% of the time, it's running 40% of the time. So 40% of its total day is spent cleaning the shed, and it keeps it really, really clean. And I suppose the best benefit out of that is it keeps the cubicle beds really, really clean. So, you know, I can get away with liming my cubicles once a day. It doesn't have to be done twice a day because there's no cow dung down around their hooves. They're not dragging the cow dung up on the cubicle bed.
Are you happy with herd health as it stands at the moment?
Well, as you can see, they're in great trim. All the cows are in great condition. I don't think I've any thin cows. I don't see any cows bulling or anything like that, so there's good conception rates. I haven't actually scanned yet, but I'm not getting a lot of repeats. As you can see, the cows have collars on them, so I use heat detection with them. So I AI for around 6 weeks, and then I leave a bullet just in to mop up after that then.
Well, as you're working full time, heat detection must be a useful tool to have in the arsenal.
Yeah, well, I suppose the best thing about it is it's auto drafting. So if there's a cow in heat, it just drafts her in. And my AI technician comes in around midday, 1 o'clock. So like I start drafting around 2 o'clock in the morning for that gate changes at 2 o'clock. So like all the cows, it will pick up most of the cows. Like very rarely you'd have to fetch a cow that's in heat. He comes in, he just lets them back in with the herd then when he's finished. So it's working really well.
How do you find balancing a full-time job, a dairy farm and family life?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it's definitely easier with a robot. Before I had the robot, I was making here with a parlour, so you know I was very keen on watching my time, and I was making 60 cows in a 12-unit milking parlour. By the time the last row was coming into the milking parlour, and by the time that row was milked, I had washed up, prepped the machine. I always used to get the machine ready for the evening milking in case I have to get a relief milker or something like that if I was travelling for work. So by the time I had all that done, gap closing the cows and in the back door of the house was 45 minutes. Now I can do all my work in the morning in that 45 minutes. So what I tend to do in the mornings is I change 2 fences. I change this block here, block C, and I change block A. So I can have all that done. I can wash down the robot arm, change my filter sock, clean my laser, check the computer in 45 minutes in the door again. And the evening time then typically I just go out, check the robot again, give the lens another wash, the laser another wash, give the robot arm just a quick hose down because if it's scrubbed in the morning, change the filter sock, and then I go out and I change block B, which opens at 2 a.m. I suppose with help around the farm, full disclosure, like my dad is around even a bit more limited capacity now. He's 79 years of age. So he's around, he might give it maybe an hour a day, some days maybe a little more, some days maybe a little less. I have a guy then that comes into the farm that gives me a hand, so he comes in 3 days a week, so he does 3 half days a week. For me, he does jobs that I find it hard to get around to, that I'm working, maintenance if you have a water leak or trough or bits of fencing. And then at weekends, like I'm here Saturdays and Sundays, but because my wife works full time, I work full time, so we want to spend a bit of time with the kids too. So I mean, Saturdays I like to start around 8 o'clock and I like to be finished 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock to have my jobs done. And Sundays then I try to be finished Sunday at 11 o'clock and we can head out for the day. And there's never a rush home. If the kids want to stop, if we're going to get a bite to eat or we want to go for an ice cream or whatever, there's never a hurry home for the cows. And that was always the thing before. Every time you were going, it was always pressure to get home for the cows. And I have 3 little girls, and because if I had a beef farm here, beef animals are harder to handle, cows are really docile, and they can do so much for me on the farm. And it's just, it's great to give them that little bit of responsibility. They love it and they love farming.
As far as support from Lely goes,
Yeah.
What kind of level of support were you given from the beginning of the process right through till today?
One of the key things is, prior to startup, that we get the support right. The farmer's prepared collars on the cows. We teach the farmer how to put collars on the cows. We teach them how to put a cow onto the software, stuff like that. So that's the support prior to startup. And then during startup, we'd have a staff member on farm at startup to guide you through to get you used to the running of the robot. And then farm management support does ongoing, so they'll guide you through the first few weeks and months of having a robot, because there's a lot of kind of settings on the robot that you maybe need to be aware of, and you won't remember it all the first day. As the service side, then we have service guys that they're there 24/7, so there's always somebody on call, and our aim is to get somebody out and farm to you within 90 minutes, so it's very, very, very good comprehensive support.
What would you say to somebody who is thinking about going automatic milking in the short-term future?
Yeah, anybody thinking of going, I would say, look, if you're thinking of investing in milking equipment at any level, check it out. And, if you value your own time and if you value your own labour, it actually works out the cheapest way to milk your cows. And we're not so much about replacing labour as displacing labour. So, what you do milking cows, is time you could spend maybe measuring grass, it's time you could be doing on health tasks. It frees up your time so much more. We can replace that and free up that time to do something else.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. We have a very brief few slides that Brian is going to talk you through. So this is his herd performance before and after the robot. So Brian, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so the way I did this is I looked at my milk delivered to the co-op, a supply carry co-op. So the milk I delivered to the co-op in 2016, 2020, and divided by the number of cows. So 2016, 4,750, you could call it, as close as anything. In 2020, I'm doing over 6,000 litres per cow. So I'm up 27% of that. Kgs of milk solids, gone from 368 to 479, which is up 30%. But I suppose not all that can be attributed to the robot. Some of it's down to genetics, probably better grass management as well. I think more time to analyze stuff and less time milking and less time doing more menial tasks. SEC, I had an SEC problem before I started for several reasons. I think probably the new housing accommodation helped with that as well. It went from 311 to 140. And again, it's just using, the reports I have in the robot. I have a cell count for every cow every day. It's really good for keeping on top of mastitis levels, etc., etc. I suppose the only thing is my feed has gone up. So it's gone up from roughly around 850 kilos a cow to just over 1,000 kilos a cow, which is up 17%. But I'm still getting a good margin over my feed. I think I worked it out there with extra milk, still working on about 8,000 extra margin if you work off that. So today I have 55 cows left milking on the robot there. There's a number dry and stuff at the moment. Butterfat's 513, protein's 338, SEC's 110. They're doing about 15 kilos per cow. So that's the performance at the moment. So if you have any questions, anyone, just put them into the chat.
Yeah, there's a good few questions come in already. So thank you very much for that. Please keep asking away and we will field them fairly shortly. The Lely principle is based on free cow traffic, which means that cows are free to visit the astronauts at any time. So with that in mind, I just want to give you a bit more of an overview of the layout of Brian's yard from an aerial perspective. So this is where the astronaut unit sits. This is the grazeway. This is the slatted area between the two, the separation unit, the main cubicle shed, the bulk tank and dairy, calf housing, and the calving area. So everything's fairly utilised around the yard. It's all in one area. There are 3 laneways, A, B and C, which come away from the Graysway and head to different blocks. The roadways are parallel for about 200 metres. And then they curve as A heads around to the right and B and C carry on for a paddock's length before separating. So A comes off to the right, B comes down here, and C is a 2-metre path just on the inside of B. The white circle over here is the point that machinery can access the roadways from the back of the yard. So if you look very closely above the second lot of bales, there's a little tractor. So he can come down and cross over the gaps to get to the paddocks to access for fertilizer, slurry, without interrupting the cows and cow flow. A farm map will be done up for each project to show what your expecting grazing layout will look like. So all 3 blocks are clearly divided, and it's important to remember that when you're considering the farm layout for grazing, that not all blocks will be the same size, and cows do not necessarily spend the same amount of time in each block. So what benefits does a national milking system bring you? Aside from the obvious of milking your cows, the specific tools within the system harvest a wealth of information to guide your management, which will lead to better informed breeding, feeding, and overall herd health, which is a direct result of measured management. Every milking follows the same routine from cleaning to teat spray, and as standard, every single one of these comes on an astronaut. So in short, we milk your cows and we give you really useful information. So it's real-time milk recording. The iFlow is a Lely patented system. So cows walk straight in and straight out, which follows their natural movements. Most people know that around 20% of the herd is replaced every year. So it is important to be able to train new animals into the system without stress on you or on them. So our sales to startup process is to facilitate farmer, their vision for the future and the farm, and to provide the best solution for each individual situation. This is our COVID-friendly team picture. We're all very dedicated to the dairy industry and look forward to helping farms across Kerry, Cork and Limerick to transition to automatic milking in the future. So now we will move on to the questions. So the first question, Brian, would be for you. How do you find allocation of grass with 3 blocks? Is it harder than just 2?
No, it's not. I don't think it's any great degree harder. I was always strip grazing, so my dad was strip grazing for years and years, as long as I can remember. So I was used to, from a very early age, of allocating grass out per cows. And I suppose the fact that some days you get it right and some days you get it wrong. I find as the longer you have a robot in, the less important the allocation becomes in terms of cows coming back to visit the robot. They'll get so used and harmony of coming back to visit and coming back to be milked. But it does have a lot to do with your graze outs, because if you're not getting the good graze outs, you're not growing as much grass. I have a tight enough grazing block. I mean, there's 56 acres of grazing when you take out the yards and stuff like that. So every acre has to do its bit. So.
Okay, so this second question is, how long do you expect 60 cows to pay for the robot?
Okay, so 60 cows, well, my plan for the robot is 66 cows now. As I said, I've a bit of an issue with I've a bit of an issue with TB with the last 18 months has been dragging on, so it's kind of hard to stock up. But I suppose I did my projections on putting 400,000 litres through the robot, and at 400,000 litres at the moment, the robot is costing me in about 4 cents a litre. That's basing a robot price of 140,000 over 10 years. Now I would be hoping that I pay it back a bit faster. You know, to pay it back maybe 7 years or something like that. I just did out, when that question came up, I did out a few quick figures. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at figures here. So like basically the repayments on 140 over 10 years, roughly around 16 grand. My milk is up per cow, like, so I'm doing about 8,000 euros worth of milk sales. Now that's after taking off the additional feed purchased in terms of meal fed. And like I used to pay a relief milker because I'm working part-time, and I suppose maybe my circumstances are different to a lot of people. There's still a lot of part-time dairy farmers out there. That might be more as the years go on. So I was getting a relief milker in more or less every morning because I was doing a lot of traveling work at the time. And I used to get maybe 2 or 3 evenings a week. So I was spending maybe 10, 12,000 a year on relief milking. So like that alone, the increase in milking, relief milking would be 20 grand a year versus payments of 16. So I still hope that the robot's making its payment all the time. Also, a big thing I see is that every cow is getting 305 days of lactation. So like I scan my cows there. I have dates with them from the AI, from when they're served out of the heat detection. And I put in their expected calving date from that, and it'll give me an expected dry off date. So I like to give cows 60 days dry, heifers maybe a bit longer, but every cow's getting her full lactation. So as one farmer said to me before, like it's a great way of getting every litre out of the cow, and you really can get every litre out, I believe, with this. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, so the next one is, where would you build farm buildings if you had another choice? In the middle of the farm?
I suppose
Question mark.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, in an ideal world, you build them in the middle of the farm. And I think, you know, back in the day, people had a less, more relaxed attitude to where they placed farm buildings. You kind of just, it was a farm building there and you walked around it. Unfortunately, I suppose, unfortunately, my yard is right in the corner of the farm. So, but look, it works away fine. It doesn't stop cow flow or cow movement. I suppose the one thing it can be a small bit awkward with at times is to get out slurry. And if you actually watch the video closely, you can see actually a track coming up a field that's near the shed. And that's because the week before this video was filmed, around the first week of October and the last week of September, I have a bit of an outside block that I took silage off of. And I just wanted to get out of the last of the slurry, and the field was dry, the field was bare, and I just got the guys just to take out the slurry out through the field there. I could pump it onto another tank and back it off the road and suck it out of that. That's another option to me. But you just have to think about, when you're setting up a farm, about how you're going to get your slurry out, how you're going to get your silage bales or your silage in and stuff like that. Like, so it takes a bit of planning, but ideally you'd have it in the middle of the farm, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, your farm yard is where your farmyard is.
So next one, how do you foot bath the cows?
So if you can just remember the drawing of a separation area, it's on the as you're looking at the robot on the left-hand side of the robot. I have a concrete footbath there, and twice a week then I would draft the cows in around, so they go in after they're finishing milking. So you can draft the cows, to say you can draft them every time they visit the robot, or you can draft them once in the 24-hour period. So I would draft the cow once every 24-hour period. They go out through the footpath and out the separation area then and rejoin the rest of the herd. So that's how I footpath them. But it can be set up to do it once a week, twice a week, whatever.
So the next one, hi Brian, good overview of your farm. You mentioned about the startup being more busy than hard. What do you see as the most important aspects about getting the startup right?
I suppose the most important aspect is that everybody stays cool and calm and that you don't excite the cows. It's just like, it's a bit, the first day is just a bit like a herd test. You've all the cows, so like I started the evening before, and I milked one bunch very late at night, and they were the first bunch I started with at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I milked a bunch around, I think, 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I split the herd into 3 actually for a start. So I had 3 bunches of 20. So I milked 20 at 10 o'clock at night. And actually, sorry, they were the last bunches to be put on the robot. And and then I built another bunch in the morning. Sorry, they were the second bunch to be put on the robot. I'm getting myself confused now. They were the second bunch to be put on the robot. The last bunch that were put in the robot were built around 5 o'clock in the morning, and they didn't get onto the robot until last. So Lely come in, we plan how we start up and how we funnel the cows through the robot. Pretty simple stuff. As we see, it's eye flow, so the cows walk straight in. And it's just that you have one cow teed up while another cow's inside the box while she's getting built, another cow's watching in. And as one cow walks out, the other cow walks in straight after him. I suppose where the real patience comes in is when you're training him to grazing. And what I just find very handy is myself and my dad would go down and we'd pick out late cows. So the robot will tell you if a cow hasn't visited in X amount of hours. So we would focus on cows that would be gone maybe 16, 17, 18 hours without being milked. So we'll just say 1184 has gone 18 hours without being milked, and 1193 has gone 16 hours without being milked. We go along to the paddock where we know there'd be. We'd have a reel. So I'd have one end of the reel. My dad would have another end of the reel, and we just walk the two cows out of the paddock with the reel, that we're not chasing around the field. It's important you have somebody else with you just to do stuff like that. Anybody would do to do that kind of a job with you. And you bring out those two cows out of the field. If you bring out 4 cows or 5 cows, it doesn't really matter. Just get them to wander off on their own. So that's basically the most part of it. I think some of it was started as well before I even started up at all. I trained the cows into using the non-return gates, or what we call the Texas gates. Also, I left the gaps opened for a little while, and I might have a water trough, just maybe out in a passageway that they got used to walking out to water. And I stopped collecting the cows after milking as well, that as soon as the cows were milked, they were just let off and they were used to going off down to the paddock on their own. So little things like that. But that's basically the startup. And also I did get help in at night, because for the first, I'd say, week, you'd want some help in at night. So I got somebody to come in just for a few hours at night. They don't have to be for the whole night, but maybe from the hours of maybe midnight to maybe 3 in the morning or something like that, have somebody come in.
Okay, the next question I think we might ask Andrew to answer. How do you manage to get the milk to the dairy? It seems quite a distance from the robot. Is there a limit to this? So this is, I suppose, a more general question.
Yeah, so the short answer is there is a limit. Ideally, you wouldn't really be going much more than 40 meters with a milk line. But typically, when we come in and do a farm layout, farm plans, we look at all that and work it in, so that it's not going to create any issues,
Thank you. Brian, back to you. What's your stocking rate?
Yeah, I saw that question there. I was just working it out. So 1 second now. My planned stocking rate will be about 1 second. Sorry. So I plan to get up to about 2.75, 2.8. I think my stocking rate at the moment this year was 3 divided by 1 second. Was 2. I was thinking about 2.5, 2.6, 2.6, 2.7 this year. Again, because I had a bit of TB, I lost a few animals along the way. But I've ran it before at around 2.75 when I had replacements, etc. on the farm, and I was still taking off plenty of surplus bales. Most of the farmers reseeded, so growing good butter grass. I haven't actually done a full year's measurement, hands up. I haven't done a full year's measure, so I couldn't give you a tonnage or anything like that for what I'm growing. But that's what my stocking rate.
So what kind of running costs are you on per year? Would you have figures for that?
Yeah, I suppose I had a 12-unit milking parlour there before. There hasn't been a real dramatic increase in electricity from my 12-unit milking parlour. Off the top of my head, I think my bills are somewhere around $550 a month. So it's about $1,100. Every second month is my electricity bill, but that's including the house and the whole lot on that. And it was pretty much the same when I did the 12-unit milking parlour. My service contract then is about $2,100 for the robot. And then I suppose you'd be buying chemicals and teeth no matter what you're making with. So That's my electricity usage and my service costs.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take this one. What would be the max distance a cow would be expected to walk to the robot for milking? It's not to or from the robot. You're asking her in a grazing system to come in, if you're high intensive, nearly 3 times a day. So in total, on a 24-hour cycle, you wouldn't want her walking more than 2 kilometers. So depending on where your land base works, you can send her, say, 1.8 kilometers there and back, but you'd have to keep her very close for your other block of grazing. So it depends, but yeah, it's 2 kilometers within the 24 hours would be your max. Depending on the type of cow you have, if you have a bit more of a hardy cow, you could push it to 2.5. But it's detrimental to ask them to walk much further. So then the next question is, any issues with lameness? I would imagine that's directed at you, Brian.
Yeah, I have a lot less lameness, I suppose. I put my hand up and there's Montelaro in the herd. That's why I foot pat regularly. My hoof care, my vet have explained to me that it's a cut in the hoof that the infection gets in with Montelaro. The small roadway I had, again, it's about getting ready and about readiness. I put it in a bit of a hurry, and I probably didn't do a good a job as I should have. I didn't slope it, so it's holding water. So any lameness I got this year was when the weather got very wet and that roadway got mucky. And that's what lameness I got this year. So I plan now that the cows are inside to resheet that roadway, and hopefully that will take away most of my lameness. But cows, very little drops, very little drops. I had actually the first drop I had, I'd say, and I don't know how long was the other day. It was a cow that was actually inside, got a drop in her front hoof. And because cows are walking through robot in single file, and they can pick out their steps, and you know they're not being rushed or pushed or anything like that. So definitely a big reduction in lameness from when I had a parlour. And maybe that's also happening in cow condition as well. You know, that I have less lame cows and less cows under pressure.
Andrew, you might want to, I think this one might be for you. Does the NEDAP tag reader system give you good activity coverage out at the paddocks?
Yeah, so the antenna for the heat detection is generally based at the yard. You know, in terms of specification, you're looking at 500 meters line of sight. Now, in general, you don't really need to get, you know, the cow doesn't need to be in line of sight all day every day, because she's going to come to the robot at least twice in the day. So at that point, any of the heat or activity information would be transferred across, and you know, if you've got automatic routing set up, it'll be, you know, it'll be done at that point then as well. So even if your farm doesn't, you know, necessarily have full line of sight across or from the yard, it's not necessarily an issue, you know, as long as you've got you know, the cow is going to come in range of the antenna anyway when she's coming to the robot.
Thank you. Brian, there seems to be a lot of brands of robots available now. Without being biased, why should a farmer choose a Lely versus maybe cheaper options?
Well, I suppose, look, I am biased because I work for Lely, but to be honest, what I see best about our robot, having worked with it, right, is the eye flow, the way the cow walks straight in and straight out. I'm basing that on a couple of reasons. 2 years ago at Lely, we launched the A5, which is our newest milking robot. And to roll, I was working with Lely, I was involved in the early marketing strategy of the A5. And they introduced A5, they gave introductory A5 to A3 customers in another market. And they asked the A3 customers, they said, you know, what was the best feature of the A5 robot? and A3 was a K-flow system. So a K-flow system, a cow enters the side of the robot, so the gate opens out to the side and the cow walks in and has to turn its backside into the robot. Most other milking robots in the market, I think every other milking robot uses that system as well. And our A3 had that system also. And when we asked the farmers, we polled the farmers, say what was the best feature they thought in the A5. They said it was iFlow, the fact that the cow walks straight in and straight out, because every heifer they ever had to put on the robot was so much easier, etc. And we were kind of a bit disappointed in that in Lely, because the A4, which was a robot before that, was where we brought out iFlow. But the A3 customers didn't know that. They had never had iFlow before. So what they thought was the best feature of our A5 was actually a feature we had in our A4 robots. So I think that's why I would say that would be one of my main reasons. Also, it's the stability of the arm underneath the cow. The arms underneath the cow all the time, and I think that's very important too. And I think we give the best range of information to cow and the easiest access to information, because everyday farmers, like, you have a lot of decisions to make. You know, will I treat this cow? Will I not treat this cow? The more parameters you have, the better you can make a decision. You might have a cow that flag up with conductivity. She may or may not have mastitis. If that's coupled with high cell count, you're more likely to know if it is mastitis. So not waste your time bringing in a cow just on a hunch or on half the data. Also, we take the temperature of every milk. So like if a cow has a temperature in her milk, got conductivity in the milk and got a high cell count, then, you know, it's an easy decision for you to make as a farmer. So I think we have, there's one report we have, and it's a report I go to every single morning on the robot. It's called the health report, where it takes the conductivity of the cow, the color of her milk, the cell count of the cow, if she has dropped in eating minutes because of the color or rumination or activity, and it puts them all into an algorithm, and it tells you if there's a sick cow in your herd. So there might be one cow on the list, there might be two cow on the list, there might be no cow on the list, and it will give you a percentage chance that the cow is sick. And like very, very quickly you can spot a sick cow. You can, you know, way earlier than you normally would get to her. So I suppose they are the reasons my bias would be in favor of Lely, aside from them paying my wages, of course.
The other thing I'd like to say is they have farm management support, which I think is valuable for farmers on the transition level. And as far as I'm aware, other competitors don't have farm management support as a dedicated person to look after you through startup and beyond.
Yeah, I suppose.
And the service on as well, like the service is vital. And I can, and not just because I work for Lely, anytime I've ever caught the phone, any hour of the day or night, Andrew or one of the boys are at the end of the phone, and 99% of the time they can sort it over the phone. Again, Addy is always on hand to make sure because I wouldn't be the best at software or whatever, and she just makes that easy for me. So sorry, Andrew, you're going to come in there?
Yeah, no, I suppose just as a sort of overview, you know, Lely specialise in robotic milking, you know, and have been producing milking robots for heading on for 25 years. You know, there's a great wealth of experience there, and, you know, robots are our sole focus. We don't have a conventional milking parlour. So for us, robots have to work, and we have to make sure they work for the customer. And, you know, touching on what Brian said, you know, in this area we've got 4 vans on the road. We've got 24/7 breakdown. All our guys are trained up in the factory in Holland. You know, if there is an issue, we have a clear escalation path through to the factory and get talking to the engineer if we need to, you know. So it's a, you know, Brian touched on an awful lot of the sort of machine specific things, but there is a massive value in Lely's experience over the last 25 years as well.
100% agree. 100%. I mean, like everything that, as Andrew said, everything is made specifically for the robot. Our guys are trained up specifically on robots. They understand, you know, about the importance of like keeping machines running. Like our motto, Lely, was like 100% uptime is the goal, and the guys work very hard for that. So, yeah.
And we have a really good team in Lely Centre, Mitchelstown. So, Brian, do you have a calf feeder?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Great tool again. First bit of automation that came into the farm was a calf feeder. You get up in the morning, your cows are fed. I get up in the morning. I met a farmer. The first farmer I met when I was working for Lely. He had a calf feeder and he had a robot. And he said, I get up in the morning, my cows are fed, my cows are milked. He said, how bad is that? And it's the same with the calf feeder. And actually, I just find that heifers that were reared on a calf feeder, they actually get going to robot nearly quicker because they're used to going in, getting a reward and going. So it can be easier to trade them into the robot too.
So the next question is, larger herds, is the expense multiplied?
Okay, I'll take that. Like the systems are sold in a modular system, so like robots range in prices. It depends on the spec you want. I mean, or I suppose our average robot would be between 140 and 150,000. The second unit is cheaper because in that there's a central unit which will do 2 robots. So your second robot is normally around 100,000 euros, depending on specification as well. So it's not as much to go to 2 robots. When you go up then for 3-4 robots, there's a lot of stuff then, like you need a computer, no matter how many robots. If you're between 1 and 10 robots, you need a computer. You need a tank connection kit that, so all the costs associated with it, there's a lot of stuff there that can power multiple robots, like our communication box. There's more stuff there, Andrew. I'm a bit tongue-tied at the moment. You can probably think of that can milk lines, etc., go cheaper as you go up in price. But the robot unit and the central unit are a modular system, and they're kind of they go best in pairs.
Yeah, so I presume I presume the question was focused probably on the initial purchase cost, maybe as well as the running cost. But yeah, as Brian was saying, there's even with one robot, there's an amount of equipment that you're going to need to get up and going. Your compressor, your PC, get the tank room set up. But as you add more robots, all that equipment is already there. So you don't have the same outlay as multiple. So your cost doesn't multiply. It's not just a case of cost per robot and multiply that out. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to it.
And one of your biggest limiting factors would be shed space and cubicle availability, because you can't, you're going to have to winter cows at some point, and if you don't have the cubicles to winter them, you can't have the cows.
What I would say is, like, we're making all around the world. We're making, I think our largest farm is 40-something robots. So we're making all sizes of farms. So it doesn't matter how big or small. I think if you work it out with labor, etc., it's the most competitive way to milk the cows, we believe, especially taking, all labor costs, the way we do a standard milking routine, etc., cows tend to show an increased yield on robots because they're more relaxed, and they're generally healthier because they're less stress in the herd, and probably more time can be given over to the management.
That pretty much answers the next question, which is any drawbacks in free access, which would probably be not many. Obviously, when you're training, you're going to have to limit the access to a certain degree to be able to get cows into the box calmly and stress-free. But once they're trained, there are no drawbacks to free access, because your cow decides what she wants to do, when she wants to do it, and she can access the astronaut at any time. So you have all the information as to where your cow will have gone, how much she milked, her health status. So if you need to find her, she's quite easily accessible as well.
I think most of the questions around free access can be sorted if you actually spend an hour or two watching robot work. You'll understand that, it's what we want to do is we want to make a robot enticing for a cow to come to it. And that's why I think we believe we build the best robot that's most attractive, that a cow likes to come and likes to get milked. And if you observe a cow's behavior for a few hours in a robot, you will see there's no drawbacks to it. After going nearly 4 years now in a robot, I can't see a single drawback to the access. Not one.
So next question for Brian as well, I suppose. How do you manage to tube cows for drying off?
Yeah, I suppose, to be honest with you, I do them either in the crush or I just do them in a calving gate. It doesn't take me long. I suppose dry off is different. When I was in a parlour, I used to dry off completely differently. So you know, it would come to this time of year and you'd say, you know what, you dry off a burst of them together. So you dry off maybe 8 or 10 cows together and you prep your stuff and get it all there. I find with robot, I dry maybe 1 or 2 cows a day or 3 cows a day or something like that. And the cow comes in, she's milked out, and you just go on your tuber. So it's not a big deal anymore. So that's where I do them. I don't have a pit at all anywhere on the farm. I cover my pit in to make a calf house out of it. So that was my old milking parlour. So that's where I tube my cows. If you wanted, you could get a treatment box or something like that. I've seen people in my travels that have a crush with a pit. Some people keep on a bit of their own milking parlour or whatever. But I just use either what's ever handiest to me, either a calving gate, which is right in the separation area. My crush is next to that. I put them into the crush, whatever, if I'm doing a few of them. I find that cows are way quieter after spending a year in the robot. It's really easy to tube them. The only difficult part of tubing, really, I see is that, you know, heifers on it, their teeth ends and they're in very good condition. So you would want your headlight on to be able to insert the tube. That's the only thing.
Thank you. So next question, what spec do you have on your robot? Is there anything you would change or add? What would you recommend on the robot? That's quite a technical question. So I suppose simplify it. What add-ons do you have that don't come as standard? So she milks and gives you the results, but what else do you have?
Well, what I have, what's extra is I have a cell counter on it. I have a Pure Steam, which is a steam clean. The reason I got that is because I had a significant cell count problem before I started with the robots. So I put that in, and it's never been switched off since I went in. So that's a steam clean cell counter. I also have a weigh floor, which in hindsight, I don't think I need it. I think a weigh floor would be for extremely high yielding cows that would, you know, to determine their negative balance. As you can see clearly, I do not have high yielding cows. So I don't think I needed the weigh floor. So that's something that I would have taken out of my own one. Is there anything I would add to the robot? Oh yeah, sorry, in terms of collars then, I have the middle range collar, which is just activity. It's a NEDAP collar. So it has activity and eating minutes. I don't have rumination. Again, on a grazing herd, I don't think I'd really get the value out of it. I think eating minutes is sufficient, you know, very quickly for a cow's not eating or is sick. I suppose if there's anything else I might add in, it might be the liquid feed. I think it's nice to give cows that bit of a boost in springtime, you know, when they're making off their backs, maybe put a bit of energy into them. I suppose if I had to add anything, it would be, we do a liquid feed option that can give a small liquid dose of glycerine maybe or something like that into the cows. Eddie knows a bit more about nutrition stuff than I do on that side of things. So that would be the only thing I would probably add on the robot.
Okay, so the next question, I was told before that a robot can only milk 70 cows. If you were to have a herd greater than 70, that would surely be more costly and it would take 2 robots at a huge expense. Would it be worth it? Andrew, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I suppose that there's people get a bit hung up on the number of cows per robot. But the way you need to look at it is how quickly, first of all, how quickly will your cows milk, and as well as that, how much milk it's going to give at one milking. A single robot can probably comfortably milk in around 2,500 litres a day, you know. So it'll all depend on your cows. You could have a cow that's doing, you know, 5,000 litres, a cow that's doing 12,000 litres a year. So it's not as simple as a robot will milk X number of cows. You know, there's a lot of factors that can that can influence that.
Thank you. So the next one is surely a pit would be a must. So we've kind of covered that one. Have conception rates improved since the robot and collars were installed? So do you use NEDAP or which collar?
I use a NEDAP collar. We were always pretty lucky at home with conception rates. We always had a pretty good conception rates. I don't think they've gone massively up since we'd always have like maybe, you know, way less than 10% empty in a year. I mean, I just went through it last night, and even though with TB issues, like I still have after 3 years, 50% of my cows that I started with are still in the herd. You know, could be on like in their third lactation herd. So we never really had a problem with conception rates. So I can't really comment too much on that one. I would say about all collars and stuff like that is that they're an aid. You know, you still have to check your cows. So like in breeding season, I still get up in the morning and I go out and I check them at dawn and dusk and stuff like that. Like it's like tail painting. It's good. It's a good aid. It's great that they're automatically drafted, but you still have to be observing your cows and you still have to be on the ball in breeding season, is what I would say. They're a good aid, but they're only an aid.
Next one, is there a best time to put in a robot for a spring calving herd, and how long does it take to have it fitted? So I'll take the first half of this one. The best time to put in a robot for a spring calving herd. So it depends on you as an individual and what you want to do. If you have an existing herd, you're going to want to avoid breeding season. And I would discourage anyone from starting up between the middle of April and the beginning of July. So you can either do it that you carve down onto the robot. So as she calves, you introduce her, you walk her in because you're going to be looking after her anyway as she's just calved, or you do a full herd startup, which is what Brian would have explained earlier, in that you split the cows into two groups. You milk one of them very late at night and one of them very early in the morning, and you push cows through one after the other over the few days to get them used to it, and then slowly start backing off as they get used to it. So everyone's different, and it's one of the things that we kind of run through the options with you as an individual as to where you would want to go. And the second part of the question, how long does it take to have it fitted? Well, again, how long is the piece of string? Andrew, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I suppose just focusing on the fitting alone is probably a very small part of the overall project. You know, we'll say from point of sale through to starting milking, there is a process that we go through, and you know, this is what we try and go through with every customer to make sure that it is a success and that there are no pitfalls. So we have you'll be dealing with our project coordinator, Pari, who will, you know, advise, I suppose, up to point of sale on layouts, and then from there on what, you know, construction requirements are, what you need for electrician, plumber, getting feed and so on. So it is, you know, it is a big project. There's no doubt about it. Once you get as far as actually fitting the robot, you're closer to the end, you know. To be specific, we have our own install team who will come in, and for a single robot, you know, they will be aiming to have the robot equipment fitted within a week, maybe less, depending on the complexity of it. After that, you're looking at about a day and a half of commissioning, and from that point on, then, you know, we would either look at probably trying to feed the cows in the robot for training before startup, or a lot of times we just go straight in and start milking. But yeah, so there is a process we go through to make sure that it is a success, you know.
Thank you. So the next one, any problems with connecting clusters to cows with hard udders after calving?
Yeah, well, I suppose, look, if you, the honest answer is, if you're going to get the udders get too big and too hard, yeah, it's going to take more time for it to connect. I suppose, look, I spent a lot of time, a good bit of time over in the Middle East, and I was doing a lot of calving cows. I was working in the big herds over there, and if I saw a cow, even in a parlor system, with her udder getting unwieldy and too big, I just go in and induce that cow. you know, rather than her being too uncomfortable and swollen up in her udder, which is not going to help her. It's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help you even if you're making a parlour if her udder gets too swelled up. So no, it's not a real big issue. I don't think I've ever had that real big problem. Look, I think once I had a cow that had really, really short teeth, and that wasn't ideal for the robot, but that was only one that was a bit annoying, but generally no, not a problem.
And I think this is the last question. Hey Brian, do you have to go out late in the evenings or late at night to the robot because of alarms going off?
And the answer is when Brian makes a mistake, yeah, he usually does. Usually, okay, so I will clean the laser always after 8 p.m. at night. 7, 8 p.m. at night, I'll have somebody, if I'm not there, I'll have somebody else do it. I used to do a lot of traveling for Lely, and I guarantee you my wife would clean the laser at 8 or 9 o'clock at night because she didn't want me ringing her from somewhere to say she had to go out and clean the laser and the robot. Once you do the basic maintenance on a robot, like your laser and your filter socks and stuff like that, it shouldn't be ringing you at night. And I would say the amount of times it has rang me in the middle of the night, that hasn't been something that I have forgotten or neglected to do. I could count in one hand. So typically the biggest alarm, and I'll be honest with you, that I get is when you change a filter sock, I press the button, and sometimes I forget to unpress the button, and it'll ring you to tell you to come back and press the button, and it will ring you within 5-10 minutes to come and do that job. So that's the biggest alarm I get. But no, the reliability is very, very good. So no, but if you do your checks, if you do your check, I just have to see a question come in there.
So what?
From somebody who knows, obviously my father. So no, there's not a big problem with alarms at night. Like we've gone on holidays and it hasn't rang me. I always keep the alarm on me. And that's probably my own fault that I never give it to someone else. I know plenty of farmers that do, but I always have the robot ring me and I delegate it to someone else. We've gone to Spain on holidays and stuff like that, and it hasn't rang me, you know.
The other thing, there seems to be a misconception out there that it will ring you for the smallest little things. You can control what it will and won't ring you for as well. And you can set specific alarms to ring you only in the day or only at night. And we try and limit it to, it will only ring you for the ones that you really need to know about. So critical alarms, that means something's gone wrong.
So do you want to go to the last question there, Eddie?
The very last one or the one before that?
So
yeah, that was the last question. So thank you. Oh, hang on.
No, there's more. The question was, I think there's a question there. I'd like to have some of the girls, the one for everyone else. We'll look into that. Was it hard to train? There's a question there, and it's a good question actually. Was it hard to train Yuji? That's my dad. My dad is Yuji Reardon, or the cows. Look, myself and Yuji are trying to train each other with the last 46 years, and I don't know who's training who at this stage. My dad is 79 years of age. He can change the filter. He can clean the laser. I can check the codes. Like anything that has to be done on the robot, I can do remotely, no matter where I am. I can be down here in the office in Mitchelstown. I can be in my car on the side of the road, or I can be in another country, and I can check it, and he can get a cow if I needed to get, if he can treat a cow if I needed to treat a cow, or whatever, and I can do the rest of it from there. The bare minimum on the robot, like wash it down, wash the robot arm, wash the laser, and clean and change the sock. Yuji is just fine with that. But training to do anything else is, yeah, we've always struggled with that. What's the last question?
I've heard from others that you need calm cows for robots, i.e. some cows don't like the arm and start kicking. Well, do you want me to take this or do you want to take that?
I think you need calm farmers.
Agreed.
Calm cows. I think, you know, if you get excited, your cows get excited. And I have seen some really cross cows I had in the parlour take very, very well to the robot, you know, because the robot doesn't react back or anything like that. There's actually another question after coming in. No, but it's cows. I haven't culled any cow for behavior problems on the robot, is what I would say. So there's no cow that I have culled for being a bad kicker. there is a function you can put on. Some cows, they might kick at the start. You can put on a function that they don't, they don't milk at night, that you can be there to supervise the milking, to calm down the robot at the start. There's a few tricks in training them and stuff like that, that you might use, lifting your leg off the ground or something like that. Same as you would in a parlour.
So what's needed for robots, landline or SIM card or broadband? So you need a SIM card for the robot to be able to ring, and you need internet to be able to connect to the lots of different components.
Andrew can work on landline as well, can't it?
Yeah, so for the notification side of things, you're either a SIM card or a landline. I would say that the vast majority of people use a SIM card. It's just that more flexible. And yes, you will also need an internet connection. For the PC, for software updates to the management program, for remote monitoring, for any number of things. So yeah, you do need a broadband connection in the shed as well.
Brilliant. Guys, that's all of the questions that have come in so far, but obviously if you do think of any over the meantime, you'll have our contact details from signing up to this webinar. So thank you very, very much for listening, and I hope everyone has a very good evening. We have another one coming up in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned on social media to see when the next one is. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.